Hey guys, so today we're going to talk a little bit about Gestalt therapy. Um, I'd like to start off talking a little bit about some of the theoretical assumptions. Humans perceive things as whole, and therefore the whole is more than the sum of its parts. And again, well, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these as we go through this presentation. Um, it's kind of a phenomenological approach. Life is best understood by knowing the subjective. Awareness is ever changing, and each moment is one of choice based on evolving awareness. Okay, pretty much this means that we are creatures of our own destiny. Kind of an existentialism. Path to wholeness and health is how we interact with nature and other people without losing our individuality. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on. People are manipulative, avoid self-reliance, and not willing to accept their own perceptions as valid. Uh, we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And then one key element of Gestalt theory is that change happens in the present. And we'll get into that. So, thinking about the view of human nature for Gestalt therapy, really each person is valued and respected as they are. Any changes for that person are dictated and limited by what that person knows and what they want. Humans are capable of obtaining genuine knowledge from their immediate experience of the perceiver. So, the experience that person, whoever the perceiver is going through in that moment. And I'll emphasize that as we go throughout this video. So, assumption, we assume that individuals can self-regulate with gained awareness. We believe people can change through becoming more aware of who they really are and what they really want. Fritz Perls says that people need to learn to stand on their own 2 feet and learn to be autonomous and deal with their life problems themselves. Okay, so some of the major principles of Gestalt, and really one of the ones I would like to focus on the most is holism. That is it's really important concept in Gestalt therapy. Gestalt actually means whole or completed. There's a couple of principles within holism that I think are important that the book points out. That is looking at figures, which are aspects in the immediate awareness, and grounds, which are kind of like things that are out of focus, things that are out of the awareness. Okay? Typically, when we look at the figures in the ground, we look for cues in the physical gestures, tone of voice, kind of your non-verbal cues to help find these things in the ground. Okay, so field theory is this idea that individual is part of an ever-changing dynamic environment, okay? And how they interact with that environment is part of that whole. Everything is interrelated and is in process constantly. And we tend to explore in Gestalt therapy some of those differences that occur between individual and environment, and some of just the ways that the individual interacts within the environment. Next one, figure formation process and organismic self-regulation. So these kind of go hand in hand in a sense. Figure formation looks at the way experiences are organized from moment to moment, thinking about how information comes from the background out of focus, into the foreground, into awareness, if that makes sense. Organismic self-regulation. This is thinking about how a need, sensation, an interest disturbs balance in an individual. This is looking at how people strive for equilibrium. And this idea talks about the emergence of information from that background into the foreground during this process. So another area that I really like to focus on that I think is kind of emphasized in Gestalt therapy is the present, the now. Thinking about this is the main orientation for Gestalt therapy. Focusing on the past and future. It is thought of as focusing on the past and future is a way to avoid coming to terms with the present. Now, that doesn't mean that the past is unimportant, but bringing it into the present moment is more important. So, helping people learn to appreciate and experience the present moment, or even if you think about the past, helping them experience those past events in the present moment. What's going on with them now that has to do with that? Therapists typically ask what and how questions, rarely why. And we try to promote awareness in the present tense. So, yeah. Typically, when we think about pathology when we think about pathology in Gestalt therapy, we think about, there's a quote by a man named Crocker. Let me see, I have it here in my notes. Okay. All forms of human psychological dysfunction are attempts at simplifying experience, alleviating uncomfortable feelings, or managing difficult adjustments. Therefore, they are considered creative adaptations to inhospitable situations in a person's life. So, one of the concepts in regards to pathology in Gestalt therapy is unfinished business. This occurs when figures emerge from the background without resolution, when past feelings have been unexpressed or not dealt with properly. They tend to be associated with distinct memories and fantasies, and they can linger in the background and interfere with contact, which we'll get to, resulting in things like preoccupations, compulsive behaviors, wariness, anxiety, self-defeating behaviors. They can manifest in negative ways. Grief, guilt, resentment. And the idea is that this unfinished business tends to persist until these feelings are actually dealt with. And Gestalt therapists believe that the most powerful is dealing with these in the present moment. So impasse is a term that came out of your book, looking at stuck points, the feelings of being stuck, and that can be clients can experience and accept themselves instead of wishing they were different. They can begin to change, is kind of the idea here. Excuse me. Okay. So, contact. Contact is interacting with oneself and others while not losing one's sense of individuality. We talked about that as one of the assumptions at the beginning. Contact is necessary if change and growth are to occur. This kind of fits in thinking about field theory that people are part of this ever-changing environment, and that environment, that contact, not just with people but with the environment, plays a role in who the person is. So another concept is withdrawal. That often is seen negatively in our current society, but if you think about contact and withdrawal, both of those play an important role for healthy functioning. Now, interruptions, disturbances, and resistances to contact prevent a full and present experience in the current moment. So, I'd like you guys to take a moment, pause the video, and if you think of some questions to post in regards to that statement so we can discuss them in class on Monday. Now, there are 5 types of boundary disturbances in regards to contact. I'm going to move my video here so you guys can see this little comic because I liked it quite a bit. Black belts in the ancient art of avoidance. Can sense trouble from 10 miles away. Expert at making self invisible. Master of deflection. Now, another activity I have for you is I'd like you to pause the video and think about if any of these types of boundary disturbances fit with these three people. Okay, so a brief definition of them. Confluence, the condition of no contact. This is, instead of an I and a you, there is a we or a vague, unclear experience of self. Introjection, the individual experiences something as him or herself when in fact it belongs to the environment. Projection, the individual experiences something something in the environment when in fact it belongs to him or herself. Retroflexion, the individual holds back a response intended for the environment and substitutes it with a response for him or herself, like self-harm, doing poorly in school. And deflection, just kind of pushing something to the side, not dealing with it. Okay, so energy and blocks to energy. This is another one I'd like you guys just to kind of think about. Giving attention to where in the body something is located, how it's used, how it's blocked. It's typically seen as a form of resistance. Clients can be encouraged to recognize where these blockages are occurring and experience them in these instances. So therapeutic goals. Okay, so excuse me. One of the goals of therapy is gaining greater awareness, and by this, greater choice. Also, I'd like to point out that to become fully capable of self-regulation, to become centered, is a pretty big goal. To be able to have that direct, immediate awareness of the perceptual field, and establish contact with the world. Know, accept, make contact. Strive for that self-actualization. Assume ownership of your own experience. To be able to really focus on the present moment instead of rather the past or the future. Typically avoiding interpretations of things and being able to accept what they are as they are. So a therapist's role, typically an active partnership with the client. Help the client to try out new behaviors and experience what's going on in the moment. Value the self-discovery process. So we are not teachers in Gestalt therapy. We do not, we want the clients to experience things and discover them for themselves, and we believe there's power in that in Gestalt therapy. We pay attention to nonverbal cues and body language. We try to bring to awareness incongruences. For example, if you have a client who is smiling and crying at the same time, I might name that and say, you know, you seem to be smiling, but you're crying at the same time. What's going on with you right now? I mean, there's a ton of different ways to approach that. That's just an example, but we really pay attention to those nonverbal cues in that moment. So clients are active participants. They create their own interpretations, their own meanings for things, and they're the expert on their life, not us. And we really want them to gain confidence through that, being able to do that on their own. Therapeutic relationship trust is very important. It's a person-to-person relationship, and we focus on the here and now. There's a lot of different techniques you guys will read about in your book. Here's one you can pause the video and read a little more about if you'd like. Maybe we can do this in class. Again, limitations and criticisms you guys can read about. Now, one thing I'd like you to do is to think about the comparison of Freud and Pearls in these two types of therapy. Go ahead and write that down for class and bring it in so we can discuss it.